Anneliesse Gormley is a self-taught woodworker nestled in the mountains of Asheville, North Carolina, sitting on her throne. If you're watching the video.
What an incredible chair.
Her focus for years was in traditional hand carving techniques and creating pieces that meet both function and aesthetic. Over the last year, she has added resin and epoxy into her work in the hopes of creating pieces that fossilize flowers, mushrooms, bugs, and special pieces into forever functional wares. And we will talk more about what all of that means on the podcast today.
I love that. And I love that, like, while we've only been here for what feels like a moment, I think we witnessed the transition into some of that resin and epoxy work.
Yeah, I mean, I took a deep dive. I sort of like put everything on the back burner and I just totally went in.
I love it.
Yeah, which I don't know. I'm sure you all feel similar where that's kind of how you have to do things. If you think about it for so long and it's like everything seems to line up and you start and it's working out, you kind of just have to follow. You have to ride that wave, until you can't. And I feel like that's exactly what I've been doing with this.
Oh,
wow.
Love it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was a bio, which is not necessarily normal. I would love to give you a moment to just also introduce yourself.
Yeah. My name is Anneliesse Gormley. I started doing woodworking specifically with spoon and hook probably around 6 years ago. I went through one of those life moments where you are totally heartbroken and everything in your life changes. I woke up one morning and I was sleeping on my sister's couch. I lived there for about 4 months. My entire life was just completely uprooted. And it was me and my dog and like just sort of figuring things out. And before that, I think I was on this life path of just doing everything you're supposed to do. You get out of high school, you go to college, you're in a good relationship, everything is great. And like, you just sort of do the monotonous thing, not necessarily monotonous for everyone, but for me, it felt that way in the life I was living. And this was the first time in my life that I sort of had the capability of choosing anything else, it was one of the best things that's ever happened as far as like a liberating moment for me. And I started to realize that I had no clue who I was at all. And in that time, my grandmother gave me all of these things. She's such a great woman. And she was essentially saying, like, I've waited for this moment when you wouldn't be in that life to hand you all this stuff. And she gave me this spoon amongst like several other things that she can trace back to the Macon Valley Burke clan of Kentucky. We have like deep Native American roots in my family. And so she was able to like tell the story of this spoon and what it possibly was used for and like how it came to come to her. And I was just completely mind blown that could end up with me. It was like one of the coolest moments. And in that time, I was taking lessons on the banjo. I was like becoming a runner. I would put on so many hats of like who I could be. And nothing was really sticking except for woodworking. I bought a hook knife from Villagers in West Asheville. And I had this tiny piece of wood and I just started carving and it felt completely natural. Like I was so excited. I found myself waking up like in the middle of the night, just thinking of any, like I could carve antlers. I could carve this. It was like all these different things. I was just so excited. And I've never felt that before.
Yeah.
know?
What were you doing before all of this? Like what for your work or livelihood? What were you doing?
Yeah, I worked at Over Easy Cafe at this time. So I was there. I also lived at Five Walnut Wine Bar. So it was like just a really happy life, like doing everything you should do in Asheville, like hiking, kayaking. I feel like I had a very outdoorsy life, which isn't necessarily me at all. I actually hate hiking. I feel like I just stare at my feet the whole time so I don't trip over anything. Like I don't really never see anything till I get to the top. And then I'm like, okay, cool.
I feel like you're the first person on this podcast to say that they hate hiking. So
I think Lisa and Dean from Atlas
maybe
said something to the effect of like, outdoors, whatever.
I love a good view, but I just feel like I'm not as coordinated as like you maybe should be to hike, or I need a hike that's a half mile, which isn't a hike. I don't know.
Know thyself. I love it. And so were you a maker of things before you got a hook knife?
Yeah. So I wouldn't have necessarily called myself a maker at that point. I grew up with 5 sisters. So I'm like smack in the middle where it's like,
wait, so 5 in total or 6 in total, including you?
6 in total, including me.
Wow.
Yeah,
oh my goodness.
I know. My dad is like, one boy, come on, Yeah, we, I think because of that, he always very much so wanted a boy. Like, we grew up, he played hockey, and so it was like rough and tough, like, here's your Tonka trucks, go have fun. But also it was like, you're not going to get something new. If you need a dresser, you're going to get your older sisters, but you can paint it, you can put knobs on it, you can do anything and make it yours. So I think I always grew up in a family where that's, you get hand-me-downs and you create something that feels personal. But I also grew up, he owned a mechanic shop. So I grew up like in a small business, sort of like family-run business mentality. Yeah. So I always knew I would do that in my life. Like I never saw myself in like a corporate role or anything that felt, I always knew like I am going to own my own business. And for a long time, I thought it would be a clothing boutique. Yeah. That was like ultimate dreams for me at one point. But I guess just to say that in that notion of sort of like creating your own life path, that has like always sort of been deep seated in who I am, Wow. Yeah.
I get it. I mean, there's a whole vibe. So if you haven't ever seen a hook and spoon
spoon and hook
Instagram picture or product in what's it, Atomic has, right? You have a space there. So like if you haven't seen it or followed this at all, there's a whole vibe. And so I can imagine you having a boutique, whether it's clothing or, I mean, if you're watching YouTube, this chair, I imagine there could be a whole, like a second hand, but like very designed, or first hand and very designed world that you could create. So that makes sense to me that you had these visions. It seems like there's a big difference though between getting your first hook knife in West Asheville and saying, I can sell this spoon and someone would buy it, or how do I sell this spoon? Like, what are the earlier steps? You're going through this crisis, and I think that's we've all been in a moment where it's like, who am I? What am I doing?
Yeah.
And so how do you, is it just therapy to carve at first and then something happens?
Yeah, it's such a strange world in the sense of how Instagram works, I guess. I think it can be such a double-edged sword, but for me, I've always sort of looked at Instagram as this way of just like telling a story. Like I remember people were like, you need to have cleaner photos. It needs to be like a white background, very clean. And it was like, I can't do that. Like my soul will, I can't. And so I just sort of tried to say those things and like be very honest about that. And this woman in Atlanta, this is 5 years ago, I guess, I carved a spoon that had antlers as the handle. And she said, I would love to come and interview you. I've never seen a piece like this. And at this point, I was working in my sister's garage, which was like a cinder block hut. It was terrifying. But, I was like, okay, make this look nice and try to kind of like a fake it till you make it thing. I decided, like, as I worked at Over Easy, if people I met asked who I was or like what I did, I would say I was a woodworker way before I like had made maybe even 5 spoons. But for me, it was a moment of like, I believe in accountability, and I so strongly believe in like community support in that sense of asking, how's this going? You said you were doing this last time I saw you. And I never wanted to be that person that could say, still trying to, like I wanted to be held so deeply accountable that like I had to follow through with this. And so within making these pieces, the magazine and blog, it was called Sweet Peach in Atlanta. Her name is Pamela, and she came up, interviewed me, and it was my first time ever talking about myself, which was really strange. And she just was like, you could sell these. And I just remember thinking, there's no way, like for what, $5? I don't know. And then one of my dear friends, her name is Morgan. She lives in town. She had a business called Bomish, which was the first sort of like home decor side of Atomic. And she said, I would love to actually like really do wholesale, while you're figuring all this out with Sweet Peach. And if you'll do Atlanta wholesale, like let's really work on this here. So she at Sunny Point Cafe one day. I brought her all the spoons that I had made at that point, and we just sat like every price point. She was like, this you should sell to me for $20, and I'm going to do a 100% markup on it. So I'm going to be selling this for $40. So it was the first time that I sort of was understanding what a price markup should look like for my company, and like what wholesale prices should look like for me. And I've sort of like kept that as a basis for how I run things. And I've listened to some other podcasts. I've listened to a lot of the other podcasts you all do. And I think that it resonates so much with me, and I'm happy to hear other people say it too, where you go into something as like an artist or a maker, but you don't know much about the business side, and that for me has really rang true. Like I can make as many spoons as you need me to make, but as far as pricing goes, that's always been a struggle for me. Or someone will say, I've always wanted to make something, and I'm like, you should just have it, like, like take this piece. And that's a part I will forever be working on that side of things. Yeah.
But like, how did you, okay, you inherited this spoon, and did you get the hook knife from your grandmother too?
I got it from villagers.
You got it from villagers. That's right. Okay. Confusing the story already. But like, had you ever carved anything before? Like how did you just start learning from someone else, or did you just start using it and you're like, okay, I'm going to just.
Yeah. So I actually, on Instagram, I followed a woman named Ariel Alaska, who, she's a female woodworker who lived in New York at the time. And I was just mind blown by what she would make. And I realized, it's shocking to me that not a lot of people know, but there's actually a really big female woodworking community, kind of from like New York to California to England. And I sort of looked at pieces that were being made. The best way I can think about it is like creating bubble letters, like you sort of have to see a whole vision of what you're trying to write. And then you have to break down each one and like put it into little pieces. And I think that's something I've always sort of loved, is like breaking down things in like very small step-by-step details. And so it took a lot of thinking I understood how to do that, and breaking pieces and breaking more pieces and hurting myself and just learning that's not how you do this. Like I started, whenever I began, I would carve out the bowl, and then I would directly work on the handle. So then on the back end of the bowl, you have this huge chunk of wood still, but I have completely thinned out this handle to where it's so fragile. Working on that has just made it to where I'm obviously going to break the handle, so it was like, okay, completely work on your bowl before you work on the handle. Or I don't know if you can see, I have like a huge cut in my hand where I just drove a gouge straight through.
Oh, my.
Yeah. And it's just these things of like, okay, that didn't work this way. Be smarter, think it through a little bit better. and try again and try again and try again until it makes sense. And the very first spoons I was making, I mean, one spoon would take me 3 days at like my best time. And now I have things to such a system that I'm making like 15 spoons a day. So it's, and that's taken years and days and hours of just understanding new systems. And I will say, I mean, I think a lot of the same sort of concept of telling people I'm a woodworker comes with people who are also woodworkers or who have their own way of doing things. And I always want to be a student first, so I think everyone can teach you something. And in classes, even if it's just asking, well, why did you do it that way or whatever the case may be. So, yeah, I think for me, it was just like learning that as well. I'm sorry, do you hear my puppy?
We got to meet the puppy in the pre-interview, and he's a cutie and a real puppy. What, like 12 weeks or right? 12 weeks old?
Yeah.
Well, I think he's doing great. Far better than me when I'm off camera and Sarah's on a call. So I find that absolutely fascinating. If I'm not mistaken, does Ariel Alaska, does she do a lot of like wood turning? And is that different than what you do?
She does, yeah. So she's working on a lathe, and power tools have always been like a very fearful thing for me. I have a lathe, but I need like 3 terrifying stories to be like, cool, I'll just put that in the corner. We'll work on that another day. But I don't know, hand tools just feel so natural. And I just think to be able to like feel something, and you can feel every groove of a hand that's done something, is just such an incredible notion to me. It's something that I've like really strived to not, I don't use like stencils, or everything is literally freehand. Like even in the resin pieces, there's a vision, but it always changes. But I think I've never wanted it to have this like perfect, clean look. I've always wanted it to be like very understood that it's made by hand. And I think with wood, with resin, these things, they can be passed down. It is something, if it's treated well, like anything, if it's treated well, it'll last forever.
How do you know when it's done? Right? Because like there seems like there's always going to be an opportunity to either, I don't know, sand it or take one more scrape off. And like, does your heart just know? Is it a time
It's
thing?
kind of, yeah. I mean, I have pieces that I started 3 years ago that are still sitting in the shop that just don't feel done. And I think that that's something that I have had to learn to actually make this a business, is when to stop and when to know that like enough is enough. And I think for me, so I kind of have had to go into things weekly where it's like, okay, you're going to focus on spoons, spatulas, and boards this week. Next week, you're going to only focus on resin. And, and it sort of flip-flops each week. But I have a goal in mind, which is usually never hit. But I think for me, I've just had to literally learn to put it down and stop. And if it doesn't feel good enough, if it doesn't feel like it would make the cut, then it just sits in a pile in the shop. I have boxes of pieces that just don't make the cut and won't probably. And I've had days where we pour a bourbon and start a fire, and I just light old pieces on fire.
Whoa.
Yeah. And it's sort of just like, you just sort of have to let things go sometimes. And like old ideas that I went through a little bit of an obsession where I thought that eyeball pieces would be like the thing that would just change my whole career. It's so ridiculous, but it's always something like that. And it's not, and I think for me, that's been another lesson learned is the pieces that don't sell well, I know to only make a couple of. And some of these are passion projects where I know it's probably not going to sell. I know it's going to sit in my atomic space for years, but it's something that I had to make. I had to see it through. It's been in my head for so long that I just had to see it. But the classic things of like spoons or spatulas, I know those will always be wanted. So I know to like always continue to make them. So it's very easy to like know when those will be done. But as far as resin goes, that has been years in the making of trying to figure out how to put flowers into pieces. And I think if anyone who's been following Spoon and Hook from the beginning, I used to carve these like insanely intricate floral pieces or mushroom pieces because I could never figure out how to like put the two together as something that was like a live flower into a piece. So I was just trying to carve these flowers, and it would take me weeks or months to finish a specific piece, which I just realized is not an obtainable business model. It's a great hobby model, but the pieces I would have had to have sold them for such an absurd price. It was just not, it's making those hard sacrifices, I guess. And I've thought about resin for a really long time, but every time I've like almost hit the end of the road of, okay, resin would work, it doesn't meet FDA requirements that I've always hoped for. Or, there's so much that goes into, like even within specific woods where you have to, is this going to be a toxic wood? Is this going to be safe for children? What if someone has a nut allergy? Or like when I've worked with restaurants, I'm like, we can never use walnut wood in case someone had a nut allergy. Or
oh wow, yeah,
I
didn't think about that.
Yeah, there's so many little things to think about that. I'm very lucky to have people in my life that have asked those questions, and it's either been people within like a woodworking community or in conversation that have made me have to like step back and think. And so resin always felt very scary in that sense because a lot of it is extraordinarily toxic. Respirators, huge rooms, a lot of ventilators just to make it work. And I have found 2 different resins on the market that are FDA cleared, and there's only one that's non-toxic. So obviously there has to be some sort of toxicity in it to create, you have 2 different compounds that you're putting together to make essentially like a hardened plastic. So there's some sort of chemical makeup there that's probably not the best, but I have a pretty safe situation at this point. Mm-hmm. But the first piece is within that, you have to mix things one part for one part, and it has to be exact. If it's off by a little bit, it'll get like a jelly consistency. It'll never set. And that was a huge stress for me because out of the like sort of gate of this, I had a lot of like personal customized things that people were asking me for. And I'm just like by nature a yes person, like it's just in my nature to say yes and figure it out afterwards. And within this, there was such a deep fear if someone gives me their wedding flowers and I don't set that correctly, or right. If someone gives me the flowers from their father's funeral and that doesn't set correctly, I won't forgive myself, So some of these custom pieces were taking me like 6 months to finish. And 4 months of that was just fear of not wanting to mess it up and practicing over and over and over until I knew there's no way I would mess up. And I kind of think that's exactly what I guess like making is, or like deciding to be a maker as a full-time career is like being completely okay with the knowledge and acceptance that you're going to fail a lot and you're going to fail over and over. And you just that's like another lesson of how you're going to figure out how to make it better. And that's kind of the trajectory I've been on, is just learning how to do this. I mean, I have goals down the road of furniture, like much bigger scaled pieces than what I'm working on right now. But it takes, I always think about a food truck, and it's like a lot of food trucks, that is the dream, right? And some people, as soon as they start a food truck, the realization that it could be a restaurant becomes more realistic. And so that becomes the stepping stone to this bigger goal of a brick and mortar restaurant. And so I sort of think that's sort of how I try to like look at my business, is this thing that I don't necessarily want to have like a 5-year, 10-year plan on, because it's changed so much more than I could have ever anticipated from the beginning of it. like when it started, I thought in my eyes, I was just going to like do farmers markets and like, you know, Saturday morning set up, and it was going to be this really sweet thing, but it never felt like it could actually be a full-time career. And then actually your all's recent podcast person, Lisa Zahia, I took her business class. And I sat down and told her every dream I had. And I love Lisa for so many reasons, but one of my favorite things about her is you can tell her your most absurd, wild dreams. And there's not like a, whoa, or she doesn't flinch. She's like, okay, well, here's how we're going to make that happen. You know, like it's just, she believes in people so much that she just said, we have to set a date. You're going to quit the wine bar, and you're going to do this full time. So we have to prepare every step up to that, what that's going to look like for you as far as like financially making sure you feel safe, making sure your shop feels like where it needs to be, making sure that you have like time management where it should be. And so I sort of I had a coach, you know, who is such a great thing for me to have in my life. I grew up playing sports. And so that's sort of like person in your life, and having 5 sisters. It's like, you know, you always have someone who's rallying for you and like believes in whatever you're trying to do. And I think that sort of thing I don't know. It's like when you genuinely believe in yourself and what you're doing, even if it's not hitting specific goals of maybe what society tells you should be doing, like it's so fulfilling. That, you know, I never went into spoon carving thinking I'm going to become a millionaire from this.
Right.
But it is definitely like the most fulfilling thing I've ever done. And I've made it a full time, you know.
Yeah. And I want to go back to that too, about that sort of that leap from having another job, working at the wine bar or the restaurant, and then transitioning full time into Spoon and Hook. Like, tell us more about that transition. Like, did you have enough revenue coming in where you felt comfortable, or were you like, no, I need to find a way to sell more so that I can quit and make this full time?
Yeah, so kind of in the same mentality of like a food truck sort of thing. I would take one day away. And I was very lucky. Christy Quinn, who owns Five Walnut Wine Bar, she is just such an incredibly amazing human. Like, I felt like she sort of was like a mama bird of a nest, you know, like she would just push me out, and she was happy to do that. Like, she wants so many people that worked at that wine bar are makers in town of different varieties. And Asheville's so cool for that reason. You know, no one wants someone to like not be successful in whatever their dreams are. And I would just take a day away, which came to the realization of, okay, not to throw numbers out, but I guess I have to for this. But, you know, okay, you would make $200 to $250 on one day at this wine bar, or $100, whatever the case may be. You now need to figure out how to like remake that money. What does that look like? Is that 3 boards, 2 spoons, and a spatula? Is that 10 spatulas? Whatever the case may be, I sort of just tried to mimic what that looked like in pieces that I knew would do well. And I've gotten to a place, I think, with the resin stuff where I hope they do well. I have such a conviction that some of the pieces will sell that it made sense to like try to just fully go into that for a while. But from leaving the wine bar, you know, when you are fully on your own, and there's now this idea of you're managing your own time. And I'm very lucky. We actually, we bought a house in Leicester, almost Sandy Mush area. And I had this dream one night that my entire body was made up of earthworms, like the strangest dream of my life. And it's like, you obviously aren't just going to peacefully go back to sleep after that. So I started looking on realtor.com at homes, and I'm not even kidding. At 3:00 in the morning, this house popped up that said a woodworker or mechanic's dream home. And I was just like, there's no way. And and our realtor had chickens. So I knew she would be up early, and she was like, we've got to go to this house right now. So we got to the house before they gave us the okay, snuck through a back window that was open, saw the whole house. And then as soon as they said, here's the lock, here's the key code to get inside the house, we put in an offer. But it's 2 acres with a shop that sits on top of a hill.
Wow.
2 bay doors with like, there's it's an old mechanic shop. So there's like a car lift, an office space, a loft, and I use maybe 10% of this ginormous space, but it's investing in yourself, it's investing in the dreams. And I think for my husband, having like a brewery, this place made sense to store stuff for him as well. So within kind of that transition of you are going to go full time with this, the next thing came time management. I'm working from home essentially. I just have to walk up to this shop.
Yeah.
And every day I now have to be diligent about that. I have to wake up at a specific time, and that's not easy for me. Yeah. Like if I could live my days the way I would choose to live my days, I would wake up when my body told me to wake up. I would go for a walk. It would, by the time I got started working, it would be probably 3:00.
Oh.
What time do you wake up? What's like your go time?
My goal time to wake up is 7. The reality time that I wake up is usually like 8:30 every day.
Just real quick, I would love to date stamp this, the transition into full-time. I believe you said you bought the house about 2 years ago?
Yes.
So did the transition full-time happen about 2 years ago as well, or just before that?
Yeah, I mean, we pretty much like, as soon as we bought this house, I was going to Lisa's business school, and we sat down one day and she said, name the date. And I decided to do it a couple months after we moved in, just so that I could somewhat have the shop settled. But I believe that I want to say it was like late July, early August of 2 years ago.
Wow.
You're just doing it.
Yeah.
And
cool. And then I just want to also say, one of my favorite sentences I've ever heard in my entire life is, I knew that she had chickens, so she'd be up early.
Yeah. I texted her at like 5, and I was like, I know you're probably awake. I'm not going to call you till 7, but I know you're up. She actually, yeah.
That's my favorite sentence I've ever heard. She has chickens, so I knew she was up.
Well, ironically, when we moved in, she was like, do you want my chickens? Her name is Tony. She has Asheville Craft Realty in West Asheville. Yeah, and she's incredible. And I thought she was joking at first, and I was like, I would love to have your chickens. And literally, she was like, you can have their house, the chickens, everything. Like, we did it. We're ready to move on. I know you'll give them a good home. So she found our house, got us our house, and gave us our first chicken. So, yeah.
That's a housewarming gift if I've ever heard of one.
I know. Yeah, she's amazing.
Wow, I love that. Okay, so I have another question too, because like at the time that you made this full-time transition, were you selling into a lot of other wholesale markets? Like how did you grow that audience, or that grow your revenue through more sales? Like how did you find those different avenues?
Yeah, so I think, again, sort of going back to this idea that I had to learn a really hard way to learn to say no as a business person. I think, like I said before, it's sort of in my nature to just say yes and figure it out afterwards. And I had one specific month where I had 3 different wholesale orders, which equated to around 300 pieces, on top of trying to just do a normal thing. And I started with an Etsy and quickly realized that for me, an Etsy just didn't necessarily make sense. I felt like for so many people, it can be a really great channel. But for wooden spoons specifically, you get into this market of like vintage wooden spoons, antique wooden spoons, handmade wooden spoons, silver. It was so inundated with information that I decided to start a website. So I went through Shopify, which if any small maker wants to start a website. It is so affordable. They are such an incredible company, and I would recommend it to anyone who wants that.
Completely agree. If you're product first, the answer is Shopify. I think that their mission statement right now is we're arming the rebels. And by that, they mean everyone that's not Amazon. Like they're trying to arm the rebels in this fight against Amazon. I think that's ambitious and awesome. So 100%, if you are selling products and things, you should be looking to Shopify first.
I totally agree. And I mean, customer service wise, I feel like I started out by calling them and just saying, I don't know what I'm doing. And they were like, okay, great. Let's start at the beginning, and just helped me create a website. But that just felt a little bit more manageable, especially because they have an app. So I set a goal for myself of, okay, you're going to always try to have pieces up. Can you hear these dogs?
Not really. I'm sure it's cute and crazy.
Yeah. They're just crying at each other. But from there, I learned that wholesale wouldn't work for me. The month that I had to make like 300 pieces, I literally was in the shop because I live and work here, I was in there for like 17 hours a day, and my hands were like shaking. I was I couldn't put in anymore, but there was no way I was going to hit the timestamps that I needed to get these pieces out. And that was one of the first hard lessons I've ever learned of truly knowing yourself and what you're capable of, and really setting those boundaries. Because I think as a small business, especially as like a product-based maker business, you want to be able to fulfill these things. And when someone says, I really love your work, I'd love to carry to my store, you want to say, of course, yes. And I just quickly realized that I don't want to disappoint people and not be able to like fulfill that. So I probably do wholesale for maybe 2 places now. Wow. One is Boston General Store in Boston, Massachusetts. And the other is Kit Kit Dizzy, which is in Nevada City. But ironically, and I believe that this is through Instagram, I have like a really large West Coast market. I have a huge like Californian market of people. So it just makes it really easy to say no now, I guess, to wholesale. But also, I think within those revenue streams, I'm so sorry.
We can hear him now.
Okay, great. We just cry at each other. Hey, stop it. Sorry.
I get that you have, like, it makes sense that you would have a large, like, California West Coast audience. It just, I called it a vibe earlier, but it's the word isn't whimsical, but it's very earthy and like organic and natural, and there's life that comes through it, and that screams Southern California to me.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I think that's been like a long time goal for me. It's the idea of storytelling. In Johnson City, Tennessee, they do a huge storytelling festival every year. And even, within Asheville, like the folklore of things and the just the stories that are passed down, I've always sort of loved that. Even back to my grandma, the most recent time I saw her, which was just a couple weeks ago for her 75th birthday, we were driving and I saw a turtle. And I was like, I think that's a snapping turtle. And she said, anytime you see a snapping turtle, if they snap you, they won't let go till it thunders. And it was like, I don't know what that means. I've never heard that in my life. I don't think it's true, but I love it.
Of course it's true. Yeah. Why would it let go until thunder strikes?
I know. It's just so, I don't know. I find something really, I've romanticized, I think, to like such a degree that sort of level of like being able to have your own language or your own beliefs and things. And I think so often now, we are so inundated with like the reality of the world and the reality of life. And I think we forget that there's still a lot of beauty, and there are a lot of great people, and there are a lot of like good stories, and there still should be this like dreamscape life Like to me, I don't know what it's worth if we no longer see like any sort of like dreamland of things, and I think looking into how even with the coronavirus, people turned to Netflix, people turned to television, people turned to art to get through a lot of these times. And I think it's just sort of been such a like signifier to me that that sort of connecting piece that people need, and that sort of like storytelling thing of like common ground that we all sort of strive for is necessary. And for me, like what can connect people better than cooking and food and sitting down at a table together? And then I think about the tools behind that, and it's a great spoon. I mean, so often you hear people say you've got to use a wooden spoon in a good sauce, or you've got to, if you don't take it out, or, I believe those things. I genuinely do. And I think that's like a little part that hopefully I can play in all of it, in the big story. So I try to like create pieces that sort of have that romantic sort of like natural storytelling, facade, not a facade, but like, sort of enveloped into that.
Yeah. I mean, I want to give some specific examples. I was looking on your site a couple of days ago, and you had a spoon that was a half moon spoon, I think. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you have a lot of other pieces that are inspired by nature in some way, or inspired by some other like real thing that exists out in the world. And we talked about the resin with the flower pieces and everything, but I'm wondering where you find that inspiration, and how does it come to you? Like, are you just lying in bed one night and like an idea pops in your head, or are you kind of always seeking inspiration actively?
Yeah, that's, I think that I'm extremely lucky in the sense that, we're all very lucky in the sense that we like live in the mountains. So I love to like be able to just walk outside. I mean, behind the shop, there's this old oak tree and this old apple tree, and there's a groundhog that lives under the shop. And so I have to chase my older dog every morning because he will run to try to get the groundhog. But then you go back there and it's just this sort of serene thing. There's moss covered everywhere, a little tiny groundhog, mushroom. It's just this beautiful thing that it's just really easy to stay inspired by that. But I think like within nature itself, there's so much to learn and so much beauty in all of it. Even with, I have a huge garden that in my dream world, I would be a farmer more than a woodworker. But I'm very inspired by farmers. I'm very inspired by that. I'm just very inspired by like, labor intensive acts of love. Like the idea that Asheville is made up of so many incredible farmers who would rather choose to wake up on the rainiest, coldest, horrible day and get out and like work the land. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, it just feels like one of the last frontiers of like love and passion, and how to like stay true to like, to me, what is the human experience, so yeah, I think I get very inspired by that, as well as vintage. And I have like an absurdly sick obsession with Cher. I love her so much. Oh, she's just like an amazing human to me. So she, like, who doesn't love Cher? So I don't know. I think I also get very inspired by this idea of like, throw a boa on it and like throw some glitter in. Who cares? You live once, like, I don't know. I sort of just that like wild heart, carelessness maybe is the right word, of just see where the chips fall. I'm very inspired by that as well. Yeah.
I don't think I hear the word share enough in my life.
I agree with you.
I
Me either.
not think of like, do you believe in life after love? I used to try and like impersonate that because I thought that was such a fun, like her voice is so great. And it's also to me a little bit funny, but like great, you know, like it's so distinct. I'll put it
like
that
a Tracy Chapman kind of thing where you just want to try to, I get that.
That's Tracy Chapman, you know, like it doesn't know, the song is always there, like, Alanis Morissette just had a song that came out and I was like, is this Alanis Morissette?
Yeah,
absolutely. You know? And so Cher is that for me. And then also every time there's a wardrobe change and anything, I'm like, who do they think they are? Cher.
I know. I completely agree with you. I actually had tickets to see her live this year. Obviously coronavirus changed a couple things, but that is huge goals of mine is must see Cher. I actually have this dream, like, I will never carve another spoon once this happens, but I dream of creating a piece for Shaquille O'Neal. Like, I want to make a piece so big that he looks very tiny. And I've gotten, I would say I'm like 3 degrees from Shaq at this point. Like, I have tried so hard for this to happen. And Tim was like, hang it up at burial, you know, like you can have a giant spoon and we can really, but I told Lisa this, like in one of our first business things of like, what are your goals? And I was like, to make a spoon for Shaq. And she was just like, okay, well, you know, like there was no hesitation. I'm like, wow.
We know someone whose son did a custom 1 of 3 painting that hangs in Shaq's walls. So technically we're can facilitate that. Now that we know that that's a thing, there's a world where we connect to another artist that's done something special for Shaq.
Okay, here's one of the most important things that I think I would love to say in this podcast. You have to say what you want out loud. You have to say your goals. You have to say what you want, no matter how crazy it is, like a spoon for Shaquille O'Neal, because you never know. You just never know who knows someone or how this can work. That's amazing that you all know someone. Like, oh, yeah, I'll never carve again once this happens. That will be it for me.
it can happen very soon.
Yeah.
We'll work on this.
Careful what you wish for. Holy smokes, that's so funny. Shaq, thank you for listening to the Making It in Asheville podcast.
We'll like tweet this out at him or something.
Can you
and
imagine,
maybe
I just wanted 2 hands holding a spoon with like an entire bag of cereal in it, just like looking so tiny. It's such a dream. I like, as a kid, I remember seeing a pair of his shoes, and it was pretty much the same size that I was at like 8 years old. I mean, it was such a massive shoe, and I just was so mind blown that I went down this deep spiral, and my mom loved it. You know, she like, let's get you into basketball. You can be like Shaq, which is obviously so scaled off. I am nowhere that tall or talented, obviously, but like, what an incredible human he is, you know?
Yeah. An incredible entrepreneur, which is often missed because he's on TV and people don't necessarily see all the other sides, but like crazy good investor early in Google, like absolute rock star as a entrepreneur post.
Yeah, music
during
festivals.
So here's to that. What a great, who saw that coming, Sarah?
I saw it because I read the pre-interview notes slightly. So I love that. I love what you said about you have to say it out loud. And I'm wondering, is there a sort of not mantra, but like something you say every day or some practice that you have where you're manifesting what you want in some way?
You know, I think for me, yes, like within, like Tim and I will have these conversations of the most absurd things we dream of doing, or like, what are things? And to me, do you know who Emmy Bethel is of Alchemy? No. The tea shop, and it's kind of in pseudo North Asheville off Charlotte Street. But
Alchemy is on Charlotte Street?
It's right off of Charlotte Street, kind of by the Starbucks.
I think I know. I've passed that before, and I've always wondered what this tea place is because it's kind of like hidden and like off the beaten path. Yeah, but we live off Charlotte Street, so we should know this.
You you all should stop in. It's an acupuncture clinic / tea shop. Emmy, the woman that owns Alchemy, she is one of the most amazing humans I know in town. Everyone should just sit at Alchemy and like learn about who she is as a person, or just hear her talk for even 5 minutes. But one of the things that inspires me most about her is she has lived several different lives. Her daughter, Maya, who's one of my friends, will be wearing the most beautiful earrings. And I'll say, where did you get those? And she'll say, oh, you know, when my mom lived in Arizona and she was a jewelry maker. Or I saw Emmy at a Halloween party and I was like, you look amazing. You know, she was this Grecian goddess, just like beautiful. And she was like, thanks, I made this dress for Maya when she was like 12 years old. And I've just always I've loved and sort of like concreted this idea for myself that I don't believe are ever supposed to stay in one specific thing, you know? And I think I learned that by having this life path that I thought was going to be where I went down, and that completely uprooted. And I sort of learned to be okay with the idea that like life shifts should be something we embrace rather than being fearful of that idea. And so, you know, even within Spoon and Hook, or, you know, for my husband with Burial, or whatever the case may be, I think we both look at it as stepping stones to the next thing. And so at our house, there's always a couple different projects constantly happening, you know, and I think that's a way to like not only stay inspired, but to also feel ease in if it doesn't go well in what you're currently doing. You know, I've had a lot of moments at Spoon and Hook, specifically within the coronavirus, where it's been this very fearful thing of, is it going to work? You know, is this going to make it? And I've had to shift a lot. But I think just accepting that failure could happen, and that's totally okay. I mean, I bought a 1969 Volkswagen Transporter probably 3 years ago, and I wanted to start a mobile business. And I thought it was going to be so much fun. It was going to be flowers and wooden wares, and I was going to have a little fridge with like local kombuchas. I had this whole dream. And then I don't know how to drive a stick shift. I don't know how to drive 4 on a floor, which really was 2 on the floor because you had to go first to third. And it was just a lot of learning lessons. And I realized that I am trying to be something that I'm not. You know, I'm trying to put on a hat, sort of like in the beginning times of like, you know, you desperately want to be this thing, or you think it's what you should be based on like where you're at in your age, or where you're at in your career, or what you see on Instagram, society-wise, whatever the case may be. But then you start doing it and realize that it's not at all what you're supposed to be doing, you know? And so I think just embracing that has been really, it's easy to try the very scary things. It's easy to create resin pieces that feel good to my soul, but might not work, knowing that like it's okay to fail. So I guess like mantra wise, I've just sort of gone into everything with the idea of like, I'm going to create these pieces that have a story and come from the heart and hopefully connect with other people. And if they don't, that is completely okay. I know that I've seen it to fruition, and like, that's enough for me, you know? So yeah, just, you know, not to keep up with music things, but to quote Chumbawamba here, you know. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to.
No, you have to.
We all know. We all are now hearing that song in our head.
Exactly.
Oh
Just like Tracy Chapman or Cher. I don't need to say the words. Everyone knows.
Oh, that's so great. Chumbawamba. Anarchist, I found out. It like
really?
Yes. I believe that is a true statement. And really like a crazy 20-person, like the original Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros. I heard that it's like a 20-person band or 30-person band.
Oh, I had no clue.
They all just banged on stuff. I might be totally wrong, but I remember reading that about Chumbawamba tub thumping, which is, you know, one of my first songs ever burned onto a CD, date stamp, for the youngsters who don't even know what that means. And it's funny because, you know, 8 tracks and recorders. Anyway, I loved what just happened here. I loved for everything from say it into the world. One of my all-time favorite books is The Alchemist. And then you talk about alchemy tea. So like, I've read it. It rounds to 10 times. And I listened to it for the first time on tape, and it was lovely. Jeremy Irons, great actor, like does the voice for it. So it was also sounded beautiful, but like I think there's something so true that you just took us through, which is, sometimes there is a struggle, like, putting a knife through your hand and continuing all the while. And then sometimes, like, learning to drive a stick shift, not this struggle that, resonates, and following your, I guess, own sense of where north should be and what feels good now is the ultimate goal. So hats off to you for
thank you
for tracing that along.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So I think this is a perfect transition to talk a little bit about what your vision is now for the future. And of course, so much has changed over the past year that I'm sure has affected kind of the vision or what you're seeing. But what's in the future? What are you working on now? And what are you hoping to do for the next months, years?
I think for me, it's just, I'm definitely going to stick down this path. Things are going to get bigger. There's definitely going to be more, there's going to be more furniture in the future.
By bigger, you mean like you're going to make bigger pieces?
Yeah, just bigger scaled tables, chairs. One of the biggest blessings, I think, within the coronavirus for me, and blessing is I'm very recognizing that is like a privileged word to use in the midst of the coronavirus. I just feel very thankful, I guess, that this has happened in the midst of so much that is going wrong in the world. I did not take out any loans. I did not take out any money. I just wanted to see how it would look. And I'm very thankful that, like, for my husband's job, we could make that choice without, obviously if Spoon and Hook went down, I was going to get a job at Target and figure it out or something, if there was no, like, it'll be okay. But I had to completely let go of resin for a while because resin alone is such an expensive thing. The process is very time consuming. It's very expensive. So I had to go back to the roots of carving spoons, carving spatulas, these things that I did not do as much of. And I needed to get back to a place where I was carving 15 plus a day, which was kind of that, like, great thing for me to remember that just because you are moving forward in things and it feels good to, like, push forward in the ways that feel good to you, it's also okay to go back. For a moment, I felt like I was completely failing. And it wasn't in the sense of, like, you can recover. I was really scared for a minute when it all first started. And sort of relearning to do that has just reminded me that I need to always keep the roots in the later pieces, so within that being said, I have had so many questions about classes. And the couple of times that I've taught have been really fun. It's always been in person, which obviously is not as accessible to anyone now. And so I am currently working on literally everything I do, from, like, the resin work to carving spoons to everything, a huge online course. And in Dream World, that will comprise of other female makers in different facets, to where there's sort of a, like, accessible way for people to do it in their own private time, and learn how to turn these things into a career if they want to. So I'm currently working with a lot of different female makers of different things, just to see, like, what that would look like for them, but also doing my own sort of like videography class thing, which kind of feels hilarious sometimes. I still don't know where to look all the time at the camera. So like, I'm not the ideal tech person to do this, but I'm just hoping that it's something I never want knowledge of something to be like held. I believe that like if we can share something that can better other people or give other people an opportunity, it's like our responsibility to do that. So I'm hoping to make this very cost friendly, very user friendly, and just something that anyone's accessible to. Because when I started this, I did not think that it would be a business, and now I'm doing it full time. So I really believe everyone's capable of that if they want it and can put the work in and like are willing to fail and try again over and over.
Well, I'm in love. I have so many more questions that we can go down that rabbit hole. We can do it offline, but I would just say if you haven't already, there's an episode with Gareth Higgins. I love his pricing model. Is when you're thinking about inclusivity into building that into a product. He has for me in my life forever, it'll be known as like the Gareth Higgins pricing model in my mind, which is here's what I believe it's worth. And with no questions asked, no problems. If you can't pay that, tell me what you can pay.
Amazing.
And if it's zero, that's fine.
Yeah.
I want people who want to be here to be involved. And hey, everyone who can pay, know that is my model. And so if you think you could afford more, please, with gratitude and appreciation, thank you, because it supports the scholarships for the other participants. And it's so powerful. It's so powerful. It's so powerful. I love it. I have goosebumps and sweating, so it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think that's a really beautiful thing. And something about having the trust, that's something I love about when you go to like the farm stands or something and they just have a little box. It's like, It could have been $10, but I'm definitely putting 20 in because you trusted me. The fact that I have this moment to be honest about what I could afford, or the fact that I want to be able to support this thing and it could help someone else be able to follow that dream too. I mean, that's as you said, that's very powerful. It's a beautiful notion. I'm going to have to listen. I have not listened to this podcast yet, but sweetie. I can't wait to. Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely a power. It's a very non-traditional episode because he's not a traditional like business man or anything like that. So it's a really nice one for sure.
Wait. Derek Higgins.
Gareth.
Yeah.
Gareth. Okay. Gareth Higgins.
Yeah. Irish
Thank
name.
you.
Yeah. We'll send it to you.
Cool. It'll be linked to in the show notes when this episode is live. So also there whenever you remember.
Yeah.
Cool. So that is your future. You're gonna follow the intuition, and I'm very excited about this course. I watch a lot of woodworking things, and I've never had a tool shed. I'm like slowly compiling. Like I got a Speedy Square, which gave me so much life. I haven't got to use it yet, but I'm like slowly getting all these tools.
Yes,
we're going to transition away from like the story of your business into this loose version of a speed round, and I'd say tangential questions. Outside of the hook spoon, are there tools in your workshop that give you just a ton of life? Maybe one has a story or whatever. What tool stands out?
A scroll saw is one of the things that I believe anyone who wants to be a woodworker should have.
And that's like a little saw that goes up and down and you like push wood around it?
Yes. It's like a miniature bandsaw, essentially. But for anyone who's willing to work on like a small scale, you can take, a 90-degree angle effortlessly without much sanding at all. It's so smooth. It's so easy to use. Once you learn how to use it, you learn. But yeah, it's very user-friendly. Also, and this is something that I've just learned throughout time, when sanding the inside of a spoon bowl or anything else, I carve these little knobs. They kind of look like little mushrooms with a really long piece of wood at the bottom. And I duct tape sandpaper to those. I put them into my power drill, and I quickly sand out the inside of a bowl. So yeah, like a lot of the things that I use are like things that they're makeshift things, of just learning what could be better for you. That's not necessarily a tool. But that sandpaper, duct tape, a good drill, and carving a knob is one of the game changers for how I've been able to like quickly carve pieces and sand them much, much more effortlessly.
Makes sense.
So yeah, I think for me, it's like a lot of the tools are just like, it's duct tape and sandpaper and blades.
That's the title of the episode. That's me.
Yeah.
Duct tape and sandpaper.
Also, I think just to say real fast, sort of in the sense of like not being scared to say what you want in the world, also not being scared to ask for what you want in the world. I reached out to Two Cherries, which is they make hand tools. And I just said, I am a female woodworker. I know that you all just had a woman take over the entire business. I'm a huge fan. I love your work, and I'm now sponsored by them.
Wow.
So they send me 4 to 6 tools, and I use them and like sort of give feedback and talk about them. But you just never know if you don't ask or if you don't talk about what you want in the world. And so shout out to Two Cherries wood tools. They are phenomenal chisels. Anyone that's looking to get a great gouge or a great knife, Two Cherries and Swiss Made, I would not steer away from either of those ever.
Cool. Yeah, I'm again, gear guy, like a little bit of a dork. I've listened to does Nick Offerman, is he like, do you love Nick Offerman or like Nick Offerman? Because I don't think there's an alternative. But I've like read his books on woodworking. I love it. Yeah.
So before the coronavirus started, I was on the trajectory to be on the show what is it?
Making it.
It's making
yeah.
it. That felt weird to say because we're making it.
Yeah.
Right now, yeah, I was going to be on the show before the coronavirus started. So I went down this deep nerd hole of like wanting to impress him if it came to fruition and not like say anything ridiculous, So yeah, I read a lot of his stuff, and he's a phenomenal human.
Oh,
such a talent, such an insane talent. Yeah.
Wow. Cool. So links to Nick Offerman's books. And on audio, obviously, because then you get his voice, which is the 1-2 punch.
Yeah, I know. That's so funny about that show too. I remember when we started making it in Asheville, we were like a year in. We didn't
not even. We're like, oh my God.
We didn't even know this show existed. And like we had Googled, maybe like Googling to like kind of check what other things were out there so we wouldn't be confused. And it's Tony's like, there's a making it show. We're like, what?
Been, like, announced yet. The only other thing that was like a heavy hitter in the space was Jimmy DiResta, who's also a maker and a friend of Nick Offerman and everyone else that makes things. He's got a podcast, I think that's called Making It or Make It.
Okay.
But Jimmy DiResta, great YouTube channel on wood things as well.
So amazing. Yeah, the idea of like a YouTube channel that is always like, I wish I could.
There's still time.
Yeah, exactly. There is. There really is.
Still time. The internet. I think YouTube would love you. And I would say go back to the truth that you learned in Instagram, where it's like people say it's supposed to be X, do Y if Y is you, and I have faith in the process, but that's my 2 cents.
Yes, I love that. Trust the process.
That's Tony's mantra for sure. I feel like he say that all the time. Cool. Well, I think it's time that we move into what we call the speed round, bonus round. It's never really that speedy, but it's just some final questions to wrap things up and get to know you outside of Spoon and Hook.
Yes.
Okay. So the first question is, this is a fill in the blank. 1, 2, 3 words. Asheville is blank.
Asheville is. I'm so sorry, I'm not speedy. Asheville is whatever you want it to be.
Ooh, I like that. Okay.
I like that.
Yeah.
And we'll leave it there. Are you a reader? And then if yes, like what book's on your nightstand, or what book have you given as a gift, or what book comes to mind when I ask you, are you a reader?
Yes. I am currently reading, sorry to get political, but I am literally looking at it right now. I'm reading Mary Trump's current work on her family dynamic. I'm very interested in that, outside of politics, just on like how that family works. So that is currently what I'm reading.
Nice.
I will say more so I'm a huge journaler. So I look back on like journal things often.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
More than I guess maybe like reading my own podcasts and journaling. I would say I like reference back more.
Yeah.
Than reading.
Yeah. I love that. Is there a particular journal or brand of a journal that you love to use?
I am obsessed with the rifle paper company ones. There used to be this John Gurian collage style journals, but they don't make them anymore. Those are my absolute favorite. They were just laid out really beautifully. But the rifle paper, they're just like very simple. They come in packs of 3s, and I just like roll through those so fast. But then can go back, they're like kind of color coordinated. But I always have like a business one, a garden one, and a personal one every year that I just scribble through.
Love it. Garden one.
Yeah. What do you write in your garden one?
How things are growing. I mean, that's why you go back and look, I imagine.
It's like, what seeds have I planted? When did I plant them? How did they do? Where did I put things in the garden? In my dream world, like down the road, I would 100% be like selling as a farmer, and having like Spoon and Hook still going as well.
Yeah.
But becoming like a good gardener is such a huge goal of mine.
Yeah. And is the journal process, because Tim, brewers seem to me like I would have imagined that they were just people who like to drink a lot, and so whatever. But it turns out like wow, they're scientists. Like it's crazy
100%.
the amount of detail on the chemistry that they're doing. And so did you pick up that with respect to a garden, or is that just how your mind works? I need it on paper.
Yes. I think that part of being a brewer and like what I've learned from Tim is that he is like a master perfectionist, which I think most brewers are. It's a total science to do it right. And I am just like, let's just throw some seeds and see what happens this year, like lessons learned. I also don't like pull anything up. I like strongly believe in just letting the birds take care of it from this point. But because of that, there is stuff everywhere. Zinnias that I did not plant, like basil. It's kind of turned into this madhouse. I'll send some pictures over.
In different forms, wherever on the website or in Instagram. But that's lovely.
It's crazy. I'd love to have you all over to see it. I'm looking out the window right now, and it's like, it's just mayhem.
Love it.
We'll have to journal that in later,
Yeah, today, mayhem. Yeah. Love it. Okay, well, the final question is, if we had a magic wand, or someone else in our audience had a magic wand of sorts, what one thing would you ask for right now?
And not Shaq to buy a spoon from you. Something else.
What one thing would I ask for right now? It's honest, and it's not the most fun answer.
Both. Yeah, the fun
okay.
Part is fun.
I would love, I've been really fixated recently on like trying to understand on like a global scale how we've gotten to the place we are right now with everything. If I had a magic wand, I would love to go back to the first conversation of people who decided to like make money the ultimate goal over human lives, or to capital I. I would love to just know a date and a secret conversation in like a dark room. That's how it happened in my head.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So I think it's an incredible ask. And what the book that I'll point to, I just listened to, is called Sapiens.
Okay. Oh, I've heard of this.
I think that Sapiens does the most thorough run through of what, the early Homo sapiens to modern society and beyond, like how it all is connected with a single long thread. That's a good first step. That's a good first step.
Okay. Yeah. That's actually, you're the second person that has mentioned that book to me. So that would be big on my list. Yeah. Just to understand if I had a magic wand. Also, if I had a magic wand, I would I don't know. This could go down. No.
Wish for another magic wand and then make more wishes.
Yeah. 3 more magic wands. Exactly.
Love it. Thank you, Anneliesse. Before we sign off, can you please let the audience know where to find you on the World Wide Web or connect in the best way that suits you?
Yes. So I do not have a Facebook. So it's either easiest to follow me via Instagram on Spoon and Hook. I also am not the best at Instagram messages. I try to get through them as quickly as I can, but if anyone wants to directly connect with me, spoonandhook@gmail.com will get to me very quickly. And that is all listed on my website, spoonandhook.com, how to contact me. So
perfect.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you all. This has been really fun. It's great to see your faces.